welcome to the Lupus and Color Butterflies of Hope podcast, where we strive to educate, inspire, encourage, and empower lupus warriors and everyone around the world. So I want to remind you all to make a note to subscribe, like, and share our podcast. And you can find the link in the bio to make a donation or to get in touch with us to get more information. So today is our first podcast, and I'm so excited to be with you all today. It's exciting to be here to spread lupus awareness. My name is Racquel Dozier. I am your hostess with the mostest from Lupus and Color. I am the founder of Lupus and Color. Lupus and Color is an international support group that spreads lupus awareness and helps with advocacy around the world. We started here in Henrico, Virginia in 2004, and we are now grown to be an international organization that is hitting people and talking to people in every country all over the world. So it's so much fun to be able to be here with you today and just share a little bit about what Lupus and Color does and what lupus itself is about. So let's start with lupus and what it's about. So lupus is an autoimmune condition. And what does that mean? It means that it's a condition that is going to be there for life. It's chronic. And it's hard to get rid of because there's no cure. And the most important thing that you need to know is that lupus is an autoimmune condition that attacks your own organs. It attacks your body, it attacks your skin, it attacks everything in your body. And it can cause a lot of pain and a lot of fatigue. And it can be pretty hard to live with. So I like to explain lupus in a way that children understand it. It's like a war in my body. And that war in my body is fighting against the cells that are supposed to protect me. And when it doesn't protect me, I have something called flares. And those flares will create pain and fatigue. And that's exactly what lupus is. It's a war in your body. Your body is pretty much fighting itself and trying to do the Superman thing. It's trying to take care of everything. It sees everything as a foreign object and it just beats everything down. And that's why you get the pain and fatigue. So I've had lupus since 2004. I was originally diagnosed with lupus, diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2002. And when lupus started to attack my intestines, I had something called ascites. And ascites created this bulk of fluid in my belly. And that was the initial diagnosis of lupus in 2004. So that's how my journey began. I've had several battles with death. The latest is when my lupus attacked my, you see, I just lost that. How lupus attacked my uterus. And my uterus became inflamed to the size of a volleyball. And that was painful because I started to look like I was almost 10 months pregnant, even though a woman can't be 10 months pregnant. So my stomach was very engorged and they had to remove my uterus. So at that uterus is in somebody's scientific experiment about how lupus attacks someone's uterus. So that's what my little story is. And you'll see me bring out my fan. You'll know me as the fan lady because, women of certain ages have little hot flashes. So that's when I'm having my little personal summer. So I want to talk to you about how lupus can affect an individual. And just to give you some, 10 facts, I'm just going to read you 10 facts that I have written down so that you understand what the severity of lupus can be. So fact number 1, for many people, there may be no visible symptoms of lupus. So somebody might have lupus and you don't even realize it. Someone I always tell somebody, someone has lupus and they don't know because the symptoms mimic so many other things. We have COVID going around right now, and COVID can really resemble lupus symptoms because of the autoimmune response that it gives. So someone probably does have lupus and they don't even know it. So that's fact number one. Fact number two is systemic lupus erythematosus is the number one harmful lupus that can ever go around, because it can affect any part of your body. It can affect any organ, your skin, your brain. So SLE is the most common lupus out there, and it can be the one that hurts you the most. So about 40% of adults with lupus develop lupus nephritis. Now, lupus nephritis is pretty much lupus of your kidneys. It affects your kidneys, and it brings your kidneys to a point where they do not operate. Some people have to go on dialysis for it. So it's hard to deal with that as well. But lupus nephritis is lupus of the kidneys. The kidneys are develops in the first 5 years of having lupus. Number 4, 9 out of 10 adults with lupus are women. Now, people will say that lupus is a woman's disease. I assure you it is not. Although 90% of lupus patients are women, you still have 10% who are men and children. So it's important to understand that men get lupus also, and it's important to understand that mostly women are affected with it. So that's how you would know from that point.
Have they said any reason why that might be?
I don't think that they have I think the most I have ever heard about that is that the estrogen that women carry might make them more susceptible to having lupus. But men get it as well. It's just more women, more African American women, more Hispanic women, more Asian women get it than white women. So it's very interesting. That is, if I was a scientist, I would probably say it's because of the estrogen and because of, the differences in our bodies that can make that really difficult to have a man get diagnosed. Number 5, the cause of lupus is still unknown, but it's not contagious. And I think people need to understand that lupus is not contagious. You can't touch me and get lupus. But I want to make sure that you understand that your germs can kill me. So if I have lupus, my immune system is totally shot. It's just like if you have something like cancer, you have no immune system. And just to make sure that people understand it, you cannot just walk up to someone and say, oh, you have lupus. Oh, is that contagious? That's rude. Let's not do that. Let's really talk about really being open, but understanding that lupus is a very difficult disease to deal with. And a lot of things that you might not have to worry about, a lupus warrior has to worry about. So you might not have to worry about going into crowds, but with our immune system being so low, we have to worry about that issue of going into crowds and making sure that we're safe. So it's not contagious, not even through sexual contact, and you can't catch it from anybody. So that's your 5th fact. 6 is fatigue is experienced by 80 to 90% of people living with lupus. And I'm going to tell you, fatigue is something that can really take you by storm. Fatigue can come out of nowhere and can really move you to a point where you're not able to move, where you're not able to function, and you're not able to just do the normal things of life that everyone else would do. So 80 to 90%, if you know somebody with lupus, you probably know somebody that has some chronic fatigue issues going on. So that's another fact that I want you to know. This is an important fact. Lupus is not like or related to cancer or HIV. In lupus, your immune system is overactive. And with that overactivity, you get different issues going on in your body. So it has nothing to do with cancer. It has nothing to do with HIV. It is literally its own disease that is really not known as well as it should be. It's one of the least known diseases around. And even though it's more prevalent than multiple sclerosis, HIV, things like that, it's more prevalent, but nobody knows about it because lupus is so hard to diagnose. And it's so hard to figure out if this works, if that works, if this is the problem, and how that works out. So you can't just go into a doctor and get a test for lupus. There is no specific test for lupus. What happens with lupus is each test that they're given shows inflammation markers. And those inflammation markers tell them what's inflamed in your body. From there are 11 criteria that can be used to diagnose lupus. One of those 11 criteria is your family history. And that's what I want to get into next. Knowing your family history and understanding how important it is to know what's going on within your family line. So for me, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis first. Then I was diagnosed with lupus. But when I looked into my family history, my father passed away of scleroderma. And scleroderma is an offset of lupus. So you have to know your family history so that at least the doctors can say, okay, well, we can see this in the line. Now, that goes back to saying, is it genetic? I don't know. It could be. It could be genetic. It could be something that is environmental. It could be what you're eating. And that's not to say that if you're eating certain foods, you're going to get lupus. No, that's not what we're saying. Because just like if you eat certain foods, you cure lupus, it's not, the same goes on the other side. So you have to make sure that you know your family history so that you can be diagnosed properly with lupus. Now, it takes a lupus warrior about 2 to 5 years to get a full diagnosis. Remember, I said I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which I do still have. But it took 2 years after the rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis to fully get diagnosed with lupus. And then from the 2 to 5 years of diagnosis, it takes at least 6 to 10 years to get the correct treatment in your body. So we know that lupus is a chronic illness. It's not something that's going to go away tomorrow. We have to make sure that we're working with the doctors and all of our care team to make sure that we're getting the correct treatment. So you have 2 to 5 years to get diagnosed. Then you have about another 6 to 10 years to get your body right and get the right treatment in order to be healthier beyond lupus. And that's a problem. That's a problem for many people, that they are not able to get diagnosed in time. They're not able to get the right treatment. And then you have people who are afraid of treatment. So it becomes another issue that they don't see the way of how the medicine can help more than it will give them something different to have to worry about.
And to me, I think one of the frustrating things, I have a family member affected. It just seems to hit everybody a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
Like there's so many different variables that come into play, severity, different types of symptoms, which probably leads into the difficulties of, treating properly and diagnosing properly as well.
Absolutely. That is a valid point, because all of our bodies are so different. What Susie might go through will be different from what Jim will go through. And what Jim will use for treatment will surely totally be different for Racquel, because our bodies are different. And the actual lupus manifests in so many different ways. So for me, the lupus manifested in my elbows, in my hands, and in my feet. I was not able to extend my elbow, my arms. I wasn't able to use my hands, and I could barely walk. And for someone else, it might have been their liver. It might have been their kidney. It might have been something internal that they could not find until they did like the ANA markers and things of that nature. And in a further podcast, we'll talk about different medications and different tests that we take in order to be diagnosed with lupus. But yes, that's a very good point, that It manifests so different in everyone's body. And the common thing for most people is, but you don't look sick. I mean, if you look at me, you don't think that I'm sick. But 2 days ago, I could barely walk. So, you look at people and you think they're too young to be sick. And I look younger than I really am. So, they're too young to be sick. They look too great to be sick. Oh my gosh, they're always running around. How could they possibly be sick? Everyone is dealing with something. Everyone is dealing with something. And it's important for us to realize that lupus does not manifest so much on the outside unless you see a butterfly rash. So with lupus, you get what's called a malarash. And that malarash is on your cheeks, on your forehead, and on your chin. So it looks like a butterfly. And if you look close enough, you can probably see my butterfly rash. And now not everyone gets a butterfly rash, but the telltale sign of lupus is a butterfly rash. The other thing that comes along with lupus are lupus lesions that look like little red patches, red splotches on the face or on the body. And those are difficult to deal with because we also get those in our mouth. So there are a lot of little things that happen with lupus that you don't see. So you can't really say that so-and-so doesn't look sick. It's real important to realize that everyone is dealing with something. And, we just don't know. So if someone tells you that they have lupus, don't say, well, at least it's not cancer. Well, it's not really a competition, but it's a lifelong thing to have to worry about. And it's hard to deal with, just as cancer is hard to deal with. So some of the different things that we have to use, it took 50 years for lupus to have its own medication to deal with lupus. And I can't say the name of the medication, but you can look it up. I'll put a link in the bio for it. But it took 50 years for one medication. Everything else is an off medication. So some of the things like steroids or anti-malarials, those are the things that they use to keep lupus under control. And it took 50 years to get one lupus medication to target lupus issues. Now we have several, thank goodness, because with modern technology and modern medicine, it has come to a point where we're starting to see more medications that are there to help. And that's important. So all of the off medications can cause other symptoms. And that's why it takes so long for people to get the right treatment. So I can take one medication and it'll start another symptom. And then I'll take another medication that will get rid of that symptom and it'll start another symptom. So you have to realize how difficult it is to, number one, diagnose. Number two, treat. And then you have to think about how your mental health is as you're dealing with all of these issues that are coming along while you're being diagnosed with lupus. So you have to deal with that whole mental health piece. It can be very difficult. It can be very, very difficult. Your last fact, though, is women of color, including African American, Asian, Hispanic, Latina, Native American, and Pacific Islanders, are most likely to develop lupus compared to Caucasian women. Why is that, we say? I don't know. Maybe it's the melanin in our skin. Maybe it's the environment that we're in. I know I spoke to someone not too long ago that said that Caribbean people have this particular gene that creates something for them. It's so many different things that it could be. But the fact is, those women get the disease more than Caucasian women. Not to say that Caucasian women do not get it, because when I was first diagnosed, that's all I saw. So, but just realize that fact that 8 out of 10 are either African American, Asian, Latina people, Pacific Islander people. So it's really important that I just get the word out about lupus and how important it is for lupus awareness and how that can bring on empathy from you. that can get you to understand it more and understand your friend, your family member, or whoever you know that might have lupus. You might meet someone that has lupus, and it'll help you to understand it just a little bit more. So the Butterflies of Hope podcast is really just here to really set the tone for lupus awareness here on the internet and all over the world, and allow you to glean some information from people who have lupus, from doctors that deal with lupus, and from the supporters that help people with lupus. So it's important. It's important. And talking about doctors, let's talk about the doctors. The doctors get maybe 5 days of medical information regarding lupus itself, regarding any type of rheumatology. So a lupus warrior is not only fighting their body, they're also fighting a system that is not as educated as it should be about it, because it's such a complex disease. So they're fighting their body, they're fighting their own mind, they're fighting the doctors, they're fighting all these different things just to get a diagnosis.
It's like a body jigsaw puzzle. There's just so many little variables, and you're having these symptoms and you're explaining to the doctor. There's so many different little pieces that go into it. So the mental health aspect, I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because that's a very big piece in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I don't know if people really realize what chronic illness can do to your mental health. From depression to sadness to anger to just feeling helpless and not feeling like a human anymore, So, and that messes with your head. It really does. And I'm not ashamed to say it. It is what it is. You can get depressed when you're sick in the hospital and you're wondering if you're going to live. Mental health can really take a toll. And for all my lupus thrivers out there, get help. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Find someone in a support group, which we do have. I'll let you know in a minute. Find someone who has a support group. Find someone who you can talk to in your family, who your friends are. Whoever it is you have to speak to, you need to speak to them and make sure that you are releasing those feelings and allowing yourself to feel them. Because what happens is you harbor all of that feeling and all of that anger and all of that sadness. You harbor that in your body, and it creates stress. And if it's one fact that I forgot to tell you, was that stress is a main factor in creating flares in lupus. And I'll say it again, a flare is when your disease is heightened in your body, whether it be inflammation in a physical standpoint or inflammation inside of you. So stress causes flares. And when you hold all of that feeling and all of that anger and all of those issues inside of you, it creates a stress in your body. One thing that we are really big at with Lupus in Color is the mind-body connection. And if your mind is not set properly, your body is automatically going to follow. And that is not to say that lupus is in your head, but it is to say that it is important for us to have a mindful aspect of dealing with chronic illness. And in that mindful aspect, you have to understand that you have to feel all of the feelings that you have. And you have to find a way to also release those feelings. And once you release those feelings, you're able to somewhat heal. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I'm never going to heal from lupus. Actually, you're healing every single day. People say, oh, you only live once. No, you live every single day. With lupus, you are healing and living every single day. And you have to make sure that you put your mind in that mindset in order to really get past those difficult moments. So the mental health piece absolutely is so important and so vital to take care of. Don't be afraid to go get therapy. It's important. Therapy is important. It helps you to sort out all those feelings. And then if they're a good therapist, they're going to give you coping skills to deal with those difficult times. Some of the coping skills that I use are meditation, working out, reading, journaling, yoga, things of that nature. And I know people always say, oh, yoga, I'm not doing yoga. Everybody thinks yoga just gets rid of everything. No, we're not saying that yoga gets rid of lupus, but it sure enough helps with the symptoms, and it helps with you to be able to cope with what lupus is doing to your body, actually. I'm going to take a sip of this, though. So this podcast is really just to really just teach people what lupus is and to garner some support locally, internationally, to get the word out that lupus is an important disease. It's a chronic illness that needs more attention, and it needs to be said that we need help. We need a cure, of course, but we also need coping skills for day-to-day activities, coping skills to get up in the morning, coping skills to be able to do the things that we used to try and do, but maybe adapt and change. So that's the purpose of Butterflies of Hope.
I have a question for you that I think the audience would benefit from. In your own personal journey, I know everyone's a little bit different, but I guess, let's just say the listener, the watcher, that they're starting their journey in handling this. They've got the diagnosis, they've started consultations with their doctor. I know you've pointed out yoga and some meditation practices. You mentioned some diet pieces. I guess if to the viewer, what is something that has helped you in the first couple years of your journey that maybe you can say, again, everyone's different, but if you do some of these things, they have helped me, and I hope that they help you.
Absolutely, great question. I think in the first couple of years, I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you what I remember about the first couple of years because it's rough. Your first couple of years of trying to be diagnosed and trying to figure out what's going on was rough. And I do remember saying to myself, be patient. Give yourself some grace, because you tend to think that you created this problem in your body by what you ate, by what you did. And just for the record, I was a stellar athlete prior to being diagnosed. I had just moved from a different town to Virginia, and I was pretty healthy, and then all of a sudden, bam, I wasn't. And I think those first couple of years really tested my patience. So I would say just be patient with yourself. Be patient with your doctors, just for the fact that I told you that they only get 5 days to learn about what lupus is. So they're learning with you. And be patient with everything that's going on around you. I can't say it enough. If you are being diagnosed with lupus, or you think that you have lupus, patience is going to be your saving grace. Grace to yourself to know that you did not do this to yourself. And the last thing is be your own advocate. Be a great advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and ask for those answers to be put in layman's terms. There are a lot of times that doctors might have said, oh, you're antiphospholipid syndrome. And I'm like, I can't even say that. I need you to tell me what that means. What does that test mean? Does that test mean that I'm going to have clots? What does it mean? So don't be afraid to be an advocate for yourself and to bring people along with you. Now, by the fourth year of me being diagnosed, I found out a couple of things. That movement in my body makes a difference as to how my body feels. That my mind will play tricks on me to make me think that my pain is the same as it was when it first came. And that my food can be my healer or something that destroys my body. So by the time that you're diagnosed, if you hear this and you're trying to get diagnosed, find out how you can keep a journal of when you're moving, when you're eating, and how your mental health is during those times of difficulty. So I would definitely say just make sure you have some patience, some grace, give yourself some compassion, allow yourself to feel everything, and be patient with your doctors. They're doing the best that they can. And I know that most people say that, oh, doctors are, they're just trying to get your money. No, that's not the fact. That's not a fact. and you need to be open and honest with your doctor about how you're feeling. That's the other tip that I have. Be open and honest about how you're feeling when you go to your doctor, because you're already afraid. So if you're telling your doctor something that's not true, then he's going to treat you on that untruth. So you have to be honest and open with your doctor. Bring somebody with you just in case you can't advocate for yourself. And then make sure that you're keeping a journal of your food, of your mood, of how you're feeling and how your mental health is, so that you know if certain foods have triggered your body to have inflammation. And we know that certain foods trigger inflammation. We know that a healthy diet is so much better for you than an unhealthy diet. So it's important for you to eat healthy. That's not to say that you have to knock off everything. But if you're keeping a food journal, and we'll talk about that in another episode, if you're keeping a food journal, you can tell what foods are starting to bring on inflammation. So for me, beef is something that I know will automatically bring on physical inflammation that you can see. My hands will swell. I'll have issues with my feet. So if you're keeping a food journal, if you're keeping a mood journal, that when I was stressed out last week, now this week I'm kind of inflamed, then you'll know where it started, where it began, and you can bring that to the doctor and you can tell them, this is what I did when this flare came about.
That was one of the big, I have a family member affected, and that was one of the big pieces of advice. We talked prior to recording the show, and what she told me was documenting everything and keeping a structure where you can kind of, like you've described, kind of predict what will happen if, these variables are into play. And I just want to remind the audience too, if you have further questions about this, you can check some of the resources in our bio. If you'd like to donate or talk to us directly, those links will be in the bio as well. And please leave a comment if you're struggling with something like this. The best part, you are not alone. So if you have any questions, obviously ask your doctor, but don't be afraid to leave a comment and we can kind of help assist you as best we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so important that you find the help that you need and keep those records, because you are the only person that can tell your doctor how your body feels. And you are the only person that can explain, hey, doc, I ate garlic and all of a sudden my fingers were swollen. Hey, doc, I was talking to my girlfriend and she said something that really stressed me out. And now I have these headaches and I'm fatigued and I can't get out of bed. These are things that you can tell your doctor. And as I stated, you have to be very open and honest with your communication. Excuse me. And if you feel your doctor is not talking to you, or the doctor is kind of pushing you off, there is such thing as medical gaslighting. And sometimes doctors will be like, oh, you just need to lose weight. Oh, don't worry about it. It's not that bad. You know your body. Be an advocate for yourself. And if he does not understand you, or if she does not understand you, if they don't understand you, however they identify as of themselves, if they don't understand you, find a doctor that does. Don't be afraid to go from doctor to doctor until you find a doctor that you're comfortable with, sharing all of your information and all of your honest symptoms with. Because sometimes we can get a little caught up in, oh, the doctor knows best. No, not always. Sometimes you know best for your body. And you and the doctor are supposed to be working together to get it together in your body. And that's the most important part of dealing with lupus. Trusting yourself enough to know, I need to talk to my doctor and I need him to listen. And how can I make him do that? And just real quickly, the way you can make a doctor listen to you is when they're saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You should just lose weight." How did you come up with that diagnosis, doctor? What is your differential diagnosis? Which means, what did you do to get from point A to point B to tell me that nothing is wrong? And that makes the doctor think. Number one, you're talking in doctor terms. Doctor so-and-so, what is your differential diagnosis? Why are you telling me that nothing is wrong? How did you get to that point? And it makes him become almost like a guy that goes through mysteries, and oh, well, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. If they cannot tell you what they've done, then you should be asking, well, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with you. Is there another doctor that might be able to tell me what's going on with my body? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, and then don't be afraid to ask them to really spell it out for you. We talked about that earlier. It's so important that you speak doctor talk, kind of, sort of, to let them know that I hear that you're the professional, but I know how my body is, and I need you to work harder for me so I can get better on this lupus journey. It's very important, very important. I want to say, though, that this particular podcast was brought to you by View Health at viewhealth.com. And they are one of our sponsors. If you see my shirt, they sponsored this shirt. And they are a company where you can actually log your symptoms, sign up for trials. You can actually do all different type of things on their system so that you can keep hold of your lupus symptoms and find some coping skills. So View Health is our first sponsor. Our second sponsor is CobraOne Social Club, and it's a motorcycle club here in Virginia. And they have been helping lupus warriors for the past 6 or 7 years with me in Lupus in Color. And I appreciate their help in helping us getting this podcast up and running. So I wanted to give that part to you guys. Let's see, what else do I have for you guys here? Let's see. I'm going to look on my phone because one thing with lupus, and many of our lupus thrivers can relate to this. One thing with lupus that we get often is called a lupus fog. And a lupus fog has actually had me go down the wrong side of the street. So lupus fog entails cognitive distress, basically. There are a couple of ways that can happen. You can forget your words. You can forget spelling. Everything just seems just like it says, a fog. And that's why I use notes on everything. So if you see me looking down at my phone, that is why, because I do live with lupus and I do get lupus fog often. And that can come sometimes because of something that I've eaten. Sometimes it can come with stress. Other times it just comes out of the blue. So the thing about lupus is that it's so unpredictable, and you can really get to a point where people don't understand, like, how come you don't know what my name is? Because of a lupus fog. And because of that fog, I might not remember your name. I might not remember. I've missed several appointments because of lupus fog. So it's very hard for people to understand exactly what's going on until it's explained. And that's the purpose of this podcast. So let's see what we got for you last.
I have a question for you.
Sure. What's your question?
This is just such a great resource and obviously means a lot to you. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the audience would love to know, just a little bit of when you started this organization. Obviously, I know some of the reasonings behind it, but just tell the audience just a little bit about the organization as a whole, how it started and, what you're doing week to week to, just create this community that obviously needs resources, support, and community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Lupus in Color, I started Lupus in Color in 2004 when I was diagnosed. And it goes back to what we discussed, where women of color are more affected with lupus than Caucasian women, because I did not see anybody like me. And when I did not see anybody like me, I said to myself, and I always say this, out of necessity comes creativity. And in that creativity, I was like, I've got to create something where no one else will feel like I felt. And that was lost. I felt lost. I felt helpless. I felt like there was nobody out there that was like me that had this. And when I created Lupus in Color, I created out of the need of knowing more information for myself. And in creating that, it became something larger than life for me. I mean, it's my passion to talk about what I'm going through, but I also love to help others to find their way through this chronic illness and through lupus to get to a point of, feeling like themselves again. And unfortunately, with lupus, you'll never feel like you used to feel. And I think my goal with Lupus in Color is to teach people how to adapt to what's going on with them today so that they can thrive past the issues of lupus. So Lupus in Color was really just built out of necessity. And, I didn't see anything here in my town. So I needed to have something physical here. And what happens is that, Lupus in Color, we do support groups. We do different walks. We do different activities that help you cope day to day. Now, in October, we've done a walk for lupus awareness with the Lupus Foundation of America. That's great. But what my goal is with Lupus in Color is to get you on your day-to-day basis. So we have walk challenges where you learn to walk 2 minutes a day and you learn to build up your tolerance to walking. Or we'll have gratitude challenges where we have gratitude journals. We do different things like conversations and cocoa, just to make sure that you realize that you are alive and you can beat this disease and still be who you want to be. Now, if you're a lupus thriver, I say thriver now. I used to say warrior all the time, but sometimes warrior to me it's just too heavy of a word. I don't always have to be that strong. I just need to be able to thrive past what I'm doing. And if I can thrive past lupus, then I know that I'm doing the right thing. So I say lupus thrivers. So if you're a lupus thriver out there, definitely get in touch with us so that we can help you out. And if you need some advocacy, if you need us to talk to your doctors, we are more than happy to do that for you. And like I said, if you contact one of our sponsors for this particular podcast, View Health, they can train you to do certain things and they can help you get to a point where you're comfortable advocating for yourself, you're comfortable in your own skin as you deal with lupus, and you're able to live and thrive beyond it. So that's how Lupus in Color was established. So, and you can do that yourself. If you're not comfortable with coming to Lupus in Color, or, we have monthly meetings every month. If you're not comfortable coming to us, make your own. Get yourself 2 or 3 friends that have lupus and make it your own. You have to be comfortable in your skin, but you also have to be comfortable when you're out there looking for support and you're looking for advocacy. Now, with Lupus in Color, we keep everything kind of positive, and we know it's not always positive. Positive toxicity is real. That's not what we do, because we know that lupus is a heck of a disease, and it can really mess you up. We recognize that fact, but we choose to focus on the encouragement, the empowerment, the inspiration. And that's why Butterflies of Hope podcast was started, because we want to educate, inspire, encourage, and empower lupus thrivers all around the world. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can check out the link in our bio and we will get you straight. I think that's all I have for today.
I think that's great. I think that's a great foundation for what we're doing here. Again, if you're watching, if you're listening, please like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and I really encourage you to check out the links in the bio. There's going to be a lot of good resources in there for you, informational, places to donate, and I really recommend, if you have a particular question for us, please ask. please ask. That's why we're here. If you feel comfortable asking us, please ask us. Obviously, ask your doctor as well. But we're here to help. We know what you're going through, and any way we can be of assistance to you. That is the point of the podcast. So,
absolutely,
thank you so much for listening and watching. You want to send us out? Anything else that I'm missing?
I think the last thing I will send out is everything that we discuss here is just for educational purposes. Make sure that you speak to your doctor. Make sure that you talk to your doctor and communicate your needs and advocate for yourself. And lastly, just know, like you said, you're not alone. We're here for you. And if you need support, reach out to us at the links below. Thanks, everybody.